Good afternoon. Sometimes this is the moment I actually get a chance to breathe. There's so much going on. And I was listening to Charles Stanley this morning. How's your day going? Is your day going okay? Mine is always waiting to exhale. It just seems like every other Thursday comes so quickly. Trying to get some laundry to my dad, trying to get him his vegetables steamed and mixed, and trying to get to the tennis center for the vet thing, and just everything, and trying to get our, not necessarily a grand opening, but our boxes have come in. The boxes for the fundraisers for True Pop Popcorn. I don't think I have one close by. Have you guys seen the boxes? They're gorgeous. And so they came in 2 weeks early, and so I thought maybe we'll have a celebrating the box arrival event so that you guys can fully understand what the fundraisers for True Pop Popcorn are going to be about. I wanted to have an event so that you guys that tune in regularly can come and eat some raw food. And to have an event so that I can caution you some things that you need to be working on to make sure that your immune system is intact for this flu season and the escalation of the COVID rates going up. How many of you know somebody that has COVID now? It's just like all of a sudden, I know at least a dozen people that have had it in the last week or two. And it seems to be lingering on a little longer in the sense that people used to get COVID and test themselves like every other day, and it would kind of go away, and now they're like testing themselves every other day, and it's not going away. They're continuing to test positive. So it's a little interesting. So just give you some tips on some things that you ought to do, and how not to get anxious when you do find out that you have COVID, how not to get anxious when some other things are happening around us. I've been hanging out with the Love Fest class of 1982. That's the class that I graduated from high school with. So good to see Ernest and Ingrid and you, Wendy. So many of our classmates have come out. We've had 2 homegoing services for 2 fellow classmates. And it's just good to be, you kind of are born into your family. You have your church family, you have your fraternity or sorority and these other groups that you belong to. But it's something about that Balloon Night class of 1982 math science folks. We just love each other. And it's just, when we see each other, I'm sure their feeling is reciprocated. You just feel all good inside. And so that's been good. Not the circumstances surrounding our gatherings, but just to see one another has been a good thing. And so then when I'm like hanging out with them, I'm thinking, I should just have something for us, So nevertheless, whatever I'm having, it's going to be next Saturday. So clear your schedule. Make sure you RSVP me when you get your email, which means you need to be on our email list. Only going to have 45 people. I think we're going to have to do 3 consecutive Saturdays, or at least try to get close to that, maybe every other Saturday or something like that. But it's just going to be difficult to get everybody in at one time to do what we need to do. So make sure that you look out for that, and you're one of the first people, because the first one's going to be the most fabulous one. So today we are talking, and I'm saying all of this to say, when you come around people, you're in gatherings, it's a lot of other things. I had a friend call me today. Her daughter has always been somewhat suicidal, and she checked herself into a hospital a couple of weeks ago, and as they're about to discharge her, she's very trepidatious about going home. So turns out that she may not have been so much suicidal, but wanting to check herself in to get away from an individual that she used to be involved with. She moved out, got her own place, and I think she's kind of fearful of the guy. And that's what you call a straight up punk. Somebody that's harassing, called the hospital, said it was her father. Her father passed many years ago. And just, kind of just hovering, very controlling. I understand the relationship was and that kind of thing. And now that she's decided to, he's going to try and threatening her. Really, don't you just hate punks? And I always tell people, you gotta have a thug or two in your life, I just had a conversation with somebody yesterday about something else, and though we're getting ready to do our spiritual thing, you know, you just, sometimes you believe that God lets you have a contact person like that in your life to just kind of creep out these other people. But, you know, today we're talking about faith and believing and not being afraid. Jesus told the man, don't be afraid. And so luckily, just out of nowhere, this individual called me this morning and was saying, you know, I think I accidentally, and I think she dialed me on purpose. She says, I think I accidentally called you. How are you? And then I'm like, how are you? And then she tells me all the stuff that's going on. And she's like, I don't know what to do. This is her daughter. I said, did you all call the police? And she's like, that really doesn't work today. And I can probably agree with that or whatever. So this is how faith and prayer and belief works. You know, you just, I'm sure she's already prayed about the situation. And so I reached out to a pastor that I know is a cool person and is always in the know about things and how to handle things. And I says, yeah, like a shelter kind of ministry for, you know, women that are being abused, physically threatened or whatever. And turns out that he's got a ministry like that, and when they're dealing with people like this, they have 2 retired police detectives that they deal with. And typically the detective will call the person, and then the person never hears from the abuser again. Isn't that cool how God just kind of put some things? So I reached out to her, gave her the information, and hopefully that situation will take care of itself. But here's our situation that we've been dealing with for almost a month now as Jesus heals. He's on his way to heal the 12-year-old girl who is the daughter of the ruler of the synagogue. And on his way to heal her, the past 2 times that we've met, we've talked about the healing of the woman that had the issue of blood. I was just in a revival or a session last week in a preaching series, and the individual, the guest preacher, spoke about that same passage. And it was so interesting when he told us what the passage was going to be, because I wanted to hear how he was going to take that. And his focus was a little different than ours, but it was good. And so we were focusing on the fact that the woman had so much faith that she believed that I don't need to touch him, I just need to touch the hem of his garment. And how did she find this out? Having an issue of blood, not being around a lot of people. And that's the other thing, is who are you listening to? Where are you getting your information from? And that's kind of the last piece that we're going into here. So remember, the ruler of the Jesus heals the man with the demonic spirit on the other side of the lake. He crosses the lake. As soon as he gets across the lake, which is a ride, and then, you know, the people were chasing him around the land, and they met him when he got off the boat. And amongst the people that met him was the ruler of the synagogue, the same synagogue that Jesus by now has been pushed out of, because it's causing all kinds of problems with the Pharisees, because he is teaching in a way that has people believing in him versus what these other folks have been teaching for a minute. And so the ruler controls the administration, the logistics, the running of the synagogue, who has heard all the things, the negative things that have been said about Jesus, but defying all odds, getting rid of his prejudices, getting rid of probably his reputation, everything else. He heard something in there that made him believe that this might be the help that I need. So he comes to Jesus pleading, you know, come and help my daughter, who is basically at death, or on death's bed. And so as they're, and Jesus didn't ridicule the man and say, you know, aren't you a part of the group of people that have put me out in synagogue? No, he just follows the man towards his home. We don't know what distance that is or how far that is, but we know that Jesus was mobbed with people, because as he asked the question, who touched me? You know, his disciples were like, there are many people here, you know, you're being mobbed. So we know that there was a mob of people. So now we're getting to the point that the woman has been healed. We still have not gotten to the ruler's daughter yet. We're on our way to the ruler's daughter, which means what? The ruler came to request Jesus to come to his home to heal his daughter, which means what? It means that the ruler of the synagogue not only was leading Jesus, but he had to experience what was going on with the woman with the issue of blood. And how do we know this? Because Jesus articulated. He didn't think, who was that touched me? He said, who was that touched me? In order to get her to confess that she was the one who touched him, in order for what? So that he can demonstrate not only to the people that were in the mob, but further to the ruler of the synagogue, go, woman, go in peace. You have been healed. Your faith has healed you. You ever wonder why he said that? Well, in a few minutes, we're going to understand why if you know how to connect the dots. I'm going to connect the dots for you. And this is important. That's why I break these passages up the way that I do. Because now as we're moving to Mark 5:35, look at this. It says, while he was still speaking. That's what this begins with. While he was still speaking. We talked about that the last time. He is speaking. He's not thinking, who touched me, which the all-knowing God knows who touched him. But he verbally articulated that to do what I just said. And then, while he's still speaking, some came from the ruler of the synagogue's house, who said, some meaning some individuals. I'm going to break this up as I'm speaking to you about it. While he was still speaking, some came from the ruler of the synagogue's house, who said, always pay attention. Remember we talked about how to study the Bible. You always want to pay attention to the verbs. And so they said, your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further? I'm going to read through this so that we can get through this, and then I'm going to come back, and then I'm going to do what I do, and then we're going to be done. So let me just go through the whole passage first. While he was still speaking, some came from the ruler of the synagogue's house, who said, your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further? As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he said to the ruler of the synagogue, do not be afraid. Only believe. I just have to repeat that. Do not be afraid. Only believe. And he permitted no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. Then he came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue and saw a huge group of people who were weeping and wailing loudly. When he came in, he said to them, why make this commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping. And they ridiculed him. But when he had put them all outside, he took the father and the mother of the child, and those who were with him, Peter, James, and John, and entered where the child was lying. Then he took the child by the hand and said to her, Talitha Cuma, which is translated, little girl, I say to you, arise. Immediately the girl arose and walked, for she was 12 years of age, and they were overcome with great amazement. But he commanded them strictly that no one should know it, and said that something should be given to her to eat. There's a lot going on there. It's a lot going on here. But I was going to break these two up, but I just felt like the gist of this is connected in both of them, so we're going to give it to you at one time. So first, let's just look at the situation, hear the situation, and then it makes perfect sense. So it says, the key thing here is, it says, while he was still speaking. While he was still speaking, what was he speaking? That's important. You have to know that to begin to understand what this passage means. While he was still speaking to the woman who had touched him, and now her body was healed. What was he speaking? We already know what he was speaking. It's in the 3 verses that we read the last time. He was speaking, woman, now go in peace, for your faith has healed you. And he is speaking this to the woman. The ruler of the synagogue has to be in close proximity to Jesus because he's leading him to his house. So this is something that the ruler of the synagogue needs to hear. Jesus knows he needs to hear, because immediately thereafter, here comes the naysayers, the faith lackers from the house saying, your daughter's dead. Don't bother the teacher anymore. Now, what does that say to you? Why are they calling him the teacher? Is he coming to teach the little girl? Is he coming to teach the ruler of the synagogue? Is he coming to teach the people in the house? No, he's specifically coming to heal the girl. So there's point number one. What do you think about the God that you believe in? Do you believe that he's a teacher? Do you believe that he's a healer? Do you believe that he's all of the above? That's important, because in the moment that you need knowledge and understanding, you better believe he's a teacher. But in the moment that you need healing, you better believe that he is the healer. He is the great physician. And the mere fact that they said, don't bother the teacher anymore, tells you the direct conflict here. The ruler of the synagogue didn't come to Jesus for a teaching. He came to Jesus for healing. So he's looking at Jesus as the healer, which is while Jesus was still speaking to the woman that you have been healed, he's reiterating, you have been healed because I am the healer. The faith that you had and the ability for me to heal you healed your body. You didn't even have to talk to me. I didn't have to tell you you were healed. You believed that I could heal you when you touched the hem of my garment. And so immediately after the people say to this man, don't bother the teacher, because they're looking at him as the teacher, Jesus, the healer, says to the person that came to get him to heal the girl, do not be afraid. Only believe. And in my sanctified imagination, it says here that he said, do not believe. Where is that passage? Jesus spoke the word. Do not believe. Do not be afraid. Only believe. I believe that statement really was, do not be afraid, continue to only believe. Because the man obviously believed that Jesus could heal the girl, or he would have never put himself in the position to be seen talking to Jesus, to come and request anything of Jesus, if he didn't truly, fully believe that Jesus, the healer, could heal his daughter. And so Jesus says, continue to believe. Only believe. Do not be afraid. And he's saying only believe. And when he says only believe, do not be afraid, and only believe, that's to insinuate that when people are afraid, they begin to be anxious, they begin to be skeptical, they begin to doubt, they begin to do all of these things. Jesus is like, put all the rest of that out of your mind and only believe. Don't be afraid and only believe. Don't try and rationalize things. Don't try and take things that look to be common sense. Only believe. And this is what I tell people all the time. I don't think we believe in what we're selling. Perfectly clear during the pandemic. I'm just like, really? Do you really believe that Jesus is who he says he is? It's not the same, and here we go. Because whenever people say, well, Jesus... Jesus said to have common sense. Well, you gotta, Only believe. Okay? And that's going to defy all logic. That's going to defy rationalization. That's going to defy what everybody else in the world is doing. We've been told that we are the remnant. We've been told that we are different. We're not to think like the world. We're in the world, but we're not to think like them. We're supposed to stand out. We're the light. We're the salt. And so we can be like that. We can only be like that when we only believe that we are who we are. We know whose we are. We know that we have already won the victory. The victory. We never die. We've been given the gift of eternal life. And so that goes into so much of the other behavior. And so all of this is just right here, so plain and clear. We miss this when we go through these passages. So this is while he was speaking, because he knew that these naysayers, Jesus already knows where he's planted us. He's put us in environments so that we can help the lost find him. He's not going to put you around a whole bunch of other believers. He's going to put you around people that need to see you only believe. That is the testimony. That is what's going to get other people to believe. Your faith, your assurance, and your confidence when things and the wheels are falling off of everything, that you continue to only believe. And it's okay to tell them, I don't know what that's going to look like. The healing is going to look like. I don't know what the reversal of this situation is going to look like. I can't answer that. I'm not supposed to answer that. I'm not God. I am just supposed to believe. with the faith of a child. Talks about the children all the time throughout the Gospels. To have the faith of a mustard seed, to have the faith of a child. Faith of a child says, I'm going to put my hand in your hand. We're going to walk out here in the middle of this highway, and I believe I'm going to be okay because I've got your hand. You know, David and Goliath. You've got the Israelites that have just come through watching what God can do. To see the hand of God so evident in their lives. And here they are shaking in their boots. And Goliath is just making a mockery out of them, just challenging them continuously. Come up here and fight me. You know? And they're just afraid. And this little kid says, hey, he didn't try to make himself out to be more than he was. When Samuel asked, you know, can you handle this? Are you crazy? All he could do is say, you know what? In the instance of the bears and the lions, the God that kept me when I was out here watching over these sheep as a little shepherd boy, it's got to be the same God that exists. And that God that kept me from the paw of a bear, that God that kept me from the paw of a lion, is going to be the God that is going to allow me to stand up to this Philistine, and we're going to have victory because we already have it because of the God that we serve. And he went up, and with one of the stones, just hit the daggone Goliath in the forehead, and the man drops dead. Really? Because he believed. And that's all this passage is saying, because you're going to run around some folks, even your church folks, people on the pew beside you, and they're just not going to believe. And Jesus says, don't be afraid, you know, only believe. And it's good that he's able to emphasize this to the guy, or kind of like reiterate it, because the man already showed the faith. So it says, only believe. And so then we move on, and it says, what? So then they get to the house, and this is what a lot of this passage is about, is the unrestrained mourning for death. You know, the way these people felt about death, you know, the weeping and the wailing and the trumpet blowing and just everything that takes place when somebody dies. You know, they could only read Lamentations, Job, only books that were sorrowful, mournful books, so to speak. They couldn't read anything else. That means all that was a part of the mourning phase. Why? Because people then had no hope. But for you and I, death is what? It is to be absent from the body, but present with God. And we're to believe, only believe that. You know, sometimes it's okay to be sad and whatever, but when it gets to a point where your hope is gone, you have to start questioning your faith. And then he says, as he's coming in, so here's another thing you have to ask yourself the question, why is it that Jesus says, and he permitted no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, the same ones that had come up on the mount. You know, it's what? It's the inner circle of Jesus. It's the ones that he says, hey, you three come closer. The rest of you stay over here. When he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he brought these same three and says, you three stay close to me. You three can see what I'm getting ready to go to, my lowest level of human degradation, I guess, when he was praying that this cup be taken from him. You know, he was allowed to see who do we bring around us at our moments of our deepest humiliation. Who do we have? The people that we trust the most. That's the inner circle. So these are the three that Jesus trusted the most. And if he trusted them, you trust people that typically are on the same page that you're on. You know? And so they believe. Peter, of course, you know, who are you? I say that you are the Son of God. Do you know? And so these are the people that he had come in. Why? Because you already have naysayers. You've got a house full of weeping and wailing people. Jesus needs people to be in his company that believe who he is and what he's able to do. And that is why he took who into the room with him? The father, the ruler of the synagogue, who had already expressed his belief by coming to get Jesus initially. And the one that Jesus just had to whisper to him, do not be afraid, only believe. And then also the mother of the child. So he's taking in people that are not going to be disruptive, people that are going to believe. Does he need them to believe? in order to heal the girl? No. This is for an exercise because there were hundreds of people, they say, weeping and wailing. Then you have the mob of people that were following him initially, that were around him when the woman touched the hem of his garment. All of this is a testimony, which is the one thing that I don't understand, and I'll have to do some research. I'm telling you that. To do some research on this very last verse, and we'll talk about that in a second. But then we want to talk about Jesus and the personality of Jesus and just who he is. So it says here that then he took the child by the hand and said to her, Talitha Kuma, which is translated, little girl, I say to you, arise. So it tells you here, why is it saying it's translated? It's translated because it's a phrase that is spoken in Aramaic. And so how does that get here with all the rest of the Greek translations? And so that's very important. Why? Because we know that the Gospel of Mark basically was written by Peter and translated. And so Peter, so when something happens that is just amazing in your life, you think about the most amazing thing that's ever happened to you, whether it was amazing in a good sense or just something that was so amazing that I almost died, whatever it was, you will remember it like the back of your hand, they say. And so this particular instance, so we have a few cases in the Bible where we've had Jesus have resurrected people from the dead, Lazarus and the other daughter. And so it's just 5 of them in a room with Jesus and the little girl. The girl, for all practical purposes, for all the people that have witnessed it, appears to be dead. And so you've got the people out here wailing. When they say wailing, that means, oh, no, I can't believe she's dead. So that's the whole, you got all of that going on. And you have Jesus saying, do not be afraid. Just believe. So what's the difference in the two? You've got calmness and serenity because of confidence and assurance. And then you've got anxiety, sadness, all of that other stuff because of no hope, no faith. And so Jesus presents to us this picture where he's in this bedroom with this little girl that appears to be dead. So that means she's lying still, probably doesn't look like she's breathing. Then you've got Peter, James, and John. And then you've got Jesus taking the girl's hand. And then you've got the mother and father who you can only imagine what they look like or what state they're probably in. So just wrap your head around the scene for a moment. It's quiet. We're in here with Jesus. He allowed us to come because we've demonstrated a level of faith that he needs us to in everything that we've done. So they probably even realize, somebody invites you to something, you feel like you have to act a certain way a lot of times, especially if you picked out of a whole crowd of other folks. And so they're probably sitting here trying not to look anxious, but believing. And then Jesus does something, and this child gets up immediately. So wouldn't you believe that something that he did? Wouldn't you remember that for the rest of your life? Yeah. And so Peter, when he's giving the information for Mark to write this gospel, he's remembering this situation, and the only thing that he could remember is what came off of the lips of Jesus. And that was in Jesus' native tongue, Aramaic. And he says, Talitha Kuma. And so that's how that got there. And that's important because it's important for us to realize how important this situation was to the disciples that were the closest to Jesus. This is that thing that later on when you read the gospel, the book of Acts, you're going to see what made them trailblazers. It was these type of experiences. And we tend to think that these were some different types of people or something, but they were men and women just like you and I who had gotten to this level to be able to experience this, Because they were walking with him. They left everything that they had, fishermen, whatever their trades were, tax collectors, to follow Jesus. Not just to be around him, but to follow him, to begin to think like him, to begin to act like him. And today, the thing that allows us to be able to experience those types of miracles today in a different way is going to be predicated on whether or not we only believe based on the way that we've been living. And the way that we have to live is to walk closely with God. What does that look like exactly? That looks like living with the living Word of God. That looks like no matter what your schedule looks like for today, before you get out into the world, you're going to spend some time with Him. You're going to study your Bible. You're going to read some things. You're going to meditate on those things. You're going to have a conversation with Him. These are things that have to be done before the world gets into your head, before the world takes over your schedule, so that Jesus can tell you what needs to be in your head, where you need to be moving today, who you need to be servicing today. Then life becomes a little bit more simpler. Because when we screw up and when things don't look like they're going well, we feel like it's okay. Because this is the path that Jesus has put me on today. I am being obedient and following it. And whatever it leads to, it's going to be okay. Because He's going to sustain me in whatever situation He puts me in. Because I only believe. And that's it. And so this last passage, after she gets up and she's walking around, Jesus tells him, give her some food to eat. But in a very strict sense, He says, do not articulate what has happened here. I don't get that. I have to look at it. I have to dwell into that. And that takes us to the end of chapter 5. So we'll move into chapter 6. I will go and see what that means. He had said that before to one of the individuals that he had healed. I'm not sure if it was the other man, the first man that we met the first time that Jesus started going into the synagogues that had the demonic spirit. And He says, or was it him? It was somebody else where He says, do not go and tell. And that was because at that particular time, Jesus was still trying to lay low, so to speak. But in this particular case, I'm not sure. I have to find exactly what it is that He's saying, do not tell this. Because everyone that was weeping and wailing because they had witnessed the girl lying still, dead, whatever. And then Jesus goes in with the 5, and then He comes out, and the girl comes out too. So what does it matter what they say, because these folks are going to think what they want to think anyway. And so there's the thing. And so the thing becomes, do not tell them what? Do not tell them that the healing was just me speaking to her to arise. So I have to look at that. I meant to do it. I didn't have any time. So that's that. So what we're going to do today is we're going to help you, because I've been so busy that I've just, and so you want to be prepared for things. The thing about eating well and raw food is when you go places, if you think you're going to find something that's going to be good for you and you go hanging out with your friends, chances are you're not, And so if you go to whatever, you have to have some, I tell people I travel with a third of my suitcase is nuts, seeds, dried fruit, so that if I need to be gone for 5, 6, 7 days, I'm going to be okay. If I can't find me something green, I can't find me something. I'm not going to have to resort, because sometimes if you feel like you're hungry, you're going to eat what's available. And so a part of being well and trying to stay well and, maintaining a clean diet is trying to be prepared. And so if I were to let you zoom in, you could see the canisters that I keep nuts and seeds and all of those, whole grains and things that I can soak and sprout. You want to have that time. And then you always want to have something in the refrigerator that doesn't take as long, because when you're doing raw food, it has to soak and sprout. And so those are a couple of days, Some things you just have to soak for 8 hours, but that's 8 hours. And if you're hungry right now, you know, telling somebody, well, you can have this tomorrow. No, that's not going to work. So the problem that I run into, because I'm smart enough to know you should always have some nuts and seeds and some sprouts and things that are ready to go. And so I often have them ready to go. I just don't have time to even prepare them. So we had soaked walnuts in the refrigerator. We had sprouted chickpeas that are really sprouted. You know, see, if you put soaked sprouted chickpeas or any other sprout in the refrigerator before it's completely dried out, because you want to soak and sprout it, and then you let it sit out for a day. Typically, you'll spread it out on a flat, something like a cookie sheet, and you can take a paper towel and kind of dry it out. But in the summertime, if you just spread it out, it's going to pretty much dry out. So I was rushed, and I just took them out of the strainer, and I put them into a container. And so if they enter into the refrigerator, even if they're in a sealed container, and there's still moisture in the sprouts, they will continue to grow. They will continue to sprout. And then when the tail gets to be, I don't know how well you can see that from there, but see how that tail is like an inch and a half. You really want to be dealing with something like 1/4 of an inch, which were the sprouts on the bottom. I mean, the ones on the top. The ones on the bottom are the ones that are wetter, so they're going to grow more. And when I dumped them into the container and put them into the refrigerator and looked in there the next day, I saw that they were still growing. But you know, sprouts are sprouts. That's cool. It's just it's gonna have a different taste and texture, and so you kind of have to keep that in mind. The nuts are okay because when they soak and sprout, you can just start eating them. You don't want to necessarily. You can put the sprouts and eat the chickpea sprouts on top of the salad. But the nuts, and that's what I do. My intent is to make some nut pate. If I don't get around to it fast enough, then I'll start just eating these, because that's how you want to eat your nuts anyway. You want to soak them so that they're easier on the digestive system. So we have 2 dishes here that we may or may not get to today, depending on how quick I do the first one. And I decided that we'd do that. And so that's the cool thing about raw food preparation too, is because we're going to do a raw hummus and a walnut pate, and a lot of the ingredients are the same. You'll find that. And so I could bring out 5 other main ingredients and make the same thing. And as a matter of fact, I did that. So here's my jackfruit, which could be a main ingredient. It doesn't have to be soaked or sprouted. It's in the can. I can simply open this and rinse it, and I can substitute the jackfruit for the walnuts in terms of how the pate is made. Because what we're going to do is move some of this around so that you can see what's going on. So for the walnut pate, which is going to be really easy, we're going to use the walnuts, obviously. We have 2 cups of herbs here. We have basil, we have lots of parsley, then we have lots of parsley and cilantro. Cilantro is my favorite. So we're going to use the cilantro and the parsley. We need fresh herbs with the walnuts. We have olive oil, which we're going to use in both recipes. We have distilled water, which we're going to need to get the chickpeas going. We have fresh garlic. So I have some already here that's minced. And then I have some jalapeno peppers, both of which are going to be used in the pate as well as the hummus. We have the raw tahini. We have, it's like a natural soy sauce, and I'm running a serious blank on what it's actually called. And then the lemon juice, both of which, all 3 of which, are going to be used for the raw hummus. Tamari, that's what that is. So you can get the wheat-free tamari. That's what you want to get. Then we have celeries. Did I say celeries with an S? We have celery. I cannot stand when people say, those popcorns are good. And I'm like, popcorns with an S? And so then we have chopped red pepper and red onions. And so you can make anything with that. So all of these ingredients, the celery, the red onions, the red pepper, some sea salt, some garlic, jalapeno peppers, the fresh herbs, the olive oil are what we're going to use to make the walnut pate, but I could easily take all of the ingredients except the nuts. I can even use the nuts if I want to. Put them in a bowl, open up the jackfruit, mix that in. As a matter of fact, I think I will do 2 because I'm always making dishes and it's way too much and I don't get a chance to eat it. And so I think I have some raw bread in the refrigerator that I've been not eating. It's been here for a minute. And so I'll make 4 dishes for myself, but I'm just going to put one together for you right now. And then I just had some extra garlic out just in case we need some more. I like my hummus to be very garlicky. So here's the thing. When you want to consolidate on, so finally, do you guys remember I was saying that that blender that I had was like on the blink? So I love Blendtec. So this is still a Blendtec, but this is the commercial Blendtec. It's not much larger. It's just a little larger, the pitcher size, but the horsepower, the commercial thing, it has like all these different levels to it. It actually has a closer that goes onto it to keep the noise down. It takes up too much space, so I have it away. I don't need to reduce any noise when I'm making stuff. Plus it's commercial, so it's probably like when you're in a place where you have patrons and you want to make a smoothie and you don't want people to be bothered by the noise. And so we can use that. Now the base, this is why I don't like some commercial base. So the base is kind of heavy and bulky, so it's not as easy to manipulate as I want to. It doesn't matter, but for the purposes of showing you things, it does. So this is the heavy duty kind of thing. And depending on what you're doing. So this is not heavy duty because the majority of these ingredients are going to be used as they are. So they're already chopped. I don't need to process them. Excuse me. The only thing that I'm going to process are the nuts. So I'm going to use the little tabletop Cuisinart. I love this little thing. It's just so practical and so fast and so small. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll see how we're moving before, if I want to pull that other thing over here and do the hummus for you. I think we're good with time. Are we good with time? We haven't been going that long. So the only thing that I need to put together is going to be the nuts. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my other ingredients in first. I hope you guys have been paying attention to doing this kind of stuff. I want to give a shout out to Lady T, Teresa Thompson, who's our class president of our Love Fest 1982 class. And also want to just wrap our arms around you, T. Her brother passed away a few weeks ago. We went to his funeral on the 29th. And it was really the Monsieur over at the Mass. The Mass funerals usually aren't the Baptist kind of funerals. But this guy was really good. He had lots of energy. It just, made you believe that, what we already know. So Teresa knew that I might come to the private repast for Carla's husband, Darnell, the other day. And just as I was leaving, she says, "Are you leaving already? We have I went to the Caribbean place and I got some vegan food for you. They made the chicken out of tofu and this and this and this." And then Ingrid stepped in and was like, "But she only does raw." I tell you, really. So I said, "Can I take a plate with me?" And he took a plate with me, and she felt good about that. And I decided, because I wasn't thinking there was going to be a repast, because it wasn't mentioned in the announcement. And so I wanted to hang out with my Love Fest people, so I went. And so kind of a little bit more of my day kind of vanished. And so I said, I need to go to the office and do some work. So I went to the office, and I was hungry, and I didn't have anything there. And so I says, "Oh, I have that plate." I went in my car, and I got that plate. And I had put a little bit of this, a little bit. She had like 3 dishes that were the vegan things. That was good. I almost called the sister and say, "Where'd you get that from?" And I don't usually eat that kind of stuff a lot, but it was really good. Yep. And so we're going to mix all of this up together. So now we just have, I said I was going to do something with that, right? See? So we're going to save some of this for the other dish. So that's what we're going to do, because this is a lot and don't have that many nuts. So this is what's so easy about raw food preparation and variety. Because though you have a lot of the same ingredients in both, the main ingredient, the nuts, and then the jackfruit are going to make a huge difference in terms of how it tastes. So I'm just going to divide half of this out, just as simple as that. So I'll have 2 smaller dishes instead of 1 glob of a dish. I think I was rushing when I did this because these are some rather chunky chunks of peppers and celery. So we have 2 things going on here. I think we'll do these 2, and I may do the other one after I say goodbye to you. And so now we're going to add half of the parsley, half of the cilantro, and then put the other half in the other dish. It's as simple as that. How cool is that? I have to do a little... We are doing the cookbook. We're working on it. It should be done by the new year, because we have all the pictures and we've been doing everything. So it's going to be an ebook collection, as well as we'll do some stuff, have some of the stuff printed out for you. To do that, and then we're going to add a little bit of garlic. A little bit of garlic. Kind of like a lot of jalapeno peppers with the one that's going to get the jackfruit. And a few jalapeno peppers for the one that gets the walnuts. You notice that we're not using any, we don't need any additional seasonings. I could easily put some cumin and paprika in here. We might do that for the jackfruit. But when you're using onions and fresh herbs and peppers, you don't need any seasoning. Now with the nuts, so we're going to put some olive oil in here for the jackfruit one, probably close to 1/4 cup. And put some olive oil in here for the walnut pate. It's so simple. So simple. Hey, check this out. This is my new olive. I keep the olive oil in here. It was absolutely, this is what you call wasteful. So there's nothing wrong with the oil container here. So put a little bit of almond oil in here as well. Just a little bit to mix it up. But when I was in Waco, Texas, and I went to the Magnolia shop, I was like, that's really cool. I'm going to get one, and then I got one for the vinegar, which I needed because the other vinegar thing I had was always breaking those little things on the top. So that's very cool. So we have the oil mixed in now. And now we're doing a pate. So you do, when you think the pate, the nut pate, the nut can be as it is. It can dry out a lot once we saw it down. So you're going to need to use close to about a tablespoon, a little bit more of the sea salt than you would normally use, because we aren't adding lemon juice to this. So you have all of these vegetables in here, the onions, the 2 different herbs. So that can become a little bitter. And so you put that salt in there. First of all, that's just that. It's going to make the vegetables much softer, more like they're sauteed. And so this is finishing this up. We're simply going to take our nuts and grind them down. And then we're going to stick them in them just a little at a time so that we can do it just once. Where's the top? Here's the top. There's the other thing. So I could have easily had taken the ingredients that are in here and put them into a blender or food processor to make it seem more like a minced nut versus a chopped nut. So what you want to do is you want to stick with what you have. So if you mince your fine ingredients, then mince the major ingredients. If not, stick with that so that the consistency is pretty much the same. So that the texture across the board is easier to deal with because you're sticking with the same size stuff. How simple was that? Too simple for you not to have done some of these on your own already. All right? So that's fun. So, oops. So now everything is here. This is when you have to use just a little bit of your imagination or your brain, knowledge, wisdom. So we mix it all together. So before I was thinking this is going to be more like a celery, onion pate because I had a lot of vegetables and I didn't have that many nuts. In fact, I thought I was going to be way too low. So I actually have 2 cups of walnut nuts soaking. They've already been soaking since this morning, so I could drain those and add some more to this. But this is more than enough. Because when you're doing raw food, you don't eat a lot. You know, a big chunk like this is going to be more than enough for you to have for a meal because of the nutrients that are in it. So you have to kind of look at it, and if it looks a little dry, then you add a little more olive oil. Can never have too much olive oil, jalapeno peppers, or sea salt. So we have yummy walnut pate. You guys would like this because I think I may put just a little bit too much sea salt in it. But it's good. And then raw food always tastes better after it's sits. So if it's sat for a day, by this time tomorrow when I eat it, it's going to taste better. Now it has a lot of bite to it because it's straight up raw. Tomorrow it will just dine down a bit. So we have that jackfruit. You don't get a lot in a can. I love my new can opener. Remember the last time I was doing this and I couldn't get in the can? Video. Person got me a can opener. So anything that comes in a can, definitely want to rinse it once or twice. I'll show you what this looks like. Can you see that? That's jackfruit. So this is the unripe jackfruit. When the jackfruit ripens, it's that sweeter jackfruit that tastes like juicy fruit chewing gum, the yellow pieces that come in the actual fruit stage. This is more in the vegetable stage. So this is so soft and tender. You really don't need a knife. You could usually just literally take your fingers and just kind of pull it apart. Now, here's something that you want to pay attention to. So we just divided up the herbs, the vegetables that we had. And we put the pate, the walnuts in there to make the pate. So remember we had a bowl full of that. So let's just do this so that we can just see in terms of what things look like proportionately speaking. And these pieces were probably sitting on the bottom. They feel a little harder. Most of that's very tender. So we have about the same amount that we had with the nuts. So we'll take our other container. That's looking like a lot. So we're going to open both of these. Bear with us, sister, for a second. Because I love the ingredients. I mean, not the ingredients, but the nutrients that you get from jackfruit. Let's see here. Dietary fiber, 18%, 5 grams. Never get 5 grams of dietary fiber from anything. Even with True Pop popcorn, you're getting 3 grams, which is huge. No sugars, no cholesterol. Tad bit of sodium, that's because it comes from a can. Do that little rinse thing, and you're good. The bottom of this is gone. So here are the important things, is with your trace minerals. So vitamin D, calcium, 33 milligrams. Potassium, 35 milligrams. That is just huge. And that is why we're going to put both in here. Because now every time I do something, I always remember. You know, sometimes you just become a creature of habit. And you do things that you really like on a regular basis. And I used to eat jackfruit and make my little jackfruit salads all the time. And just kind of, you used to be able to find these in the Caribbean food stores, green jackfruit. And they just, you know, when one of the major food distributors started doing something crazy, then it became difficult to get it. These were sitting on top of each other and taped like that, because I actually had to order this off of Amazon for some ridiculous price. But I was just told the other day when I was looking for some dried jackfruit, which is my favorite all-time dried fruit snack, and Tacoma Park Food Co-op carries it. The dried jackfruit is some kind of yummy. And I asked the lady at Trader Joe's, I was like, you know, because they had a whole bunch of different types of dried fruit. I was like, do you have any jackfruit dried fruit? She was like, no, we have the pulled barbecue jackfruit and the canned jackfruit. And I was like, canned jackfruit? Y'all got canned jackfruit? So at the time, I was in there for something else, and I didn't have time to go wandering around. But that's good to know that Trader Joe's sells canned jackfruit. I'm hoping it's the right green jackfruit, but I'll find out. I'll let you guys know, but that is really good to know. So I'll start doing, because you can make a really nice raw crab cake, you know, the raw version of the crab cake that tastes like it and everything, using jackfruit. So here's our little dish. I had to put a little more olive oil in the other one, so it's probably going to be the same here. The other thing that I would do, so we'll dump that. The other thing that I would add would be olives. Yep. Put all of that in there. This is a really great tasting dish when you're having a party. You can put some of the sprouted crackers out, or some of those. There's a couple of tortilla chips on the market that are pretty decent. I forget the group that does a really clean one. I haven't seen them in a while. Hopefully they're still in business. We'll put just a tad bit of sea salt in here, not much. I think we're not going to do the soybean thing simply because when I'm here by myself doing this and it's all quiet, I'm thinking that maybe I'm losing some of you who just... But we have some ripened California black olives. So we're going to put those in. These are not your traditional ones. I usually just leave them in with a little olive oil so they don't have the salt and vinegar that you typically have in olives. So we'll put a little more sea salt in the, well, we already put some in there, so that should be enough. So you just put a bunch of those in. And I think that's good. I don't think we really need anything else. We'll taste it and see. And so you see how simple that was? Remember earlier I said you could have put the nuts in here if you wanted to. Yeah. This usually, I always tell people it's got a wicked kind of taste to it. But it's very filling. If I had to put my hand on something, what kind of dish it would remind you of or be similar to, I couldn't really say. Yep. So, you guys have seen me make the raw hummus before, so I don't really need to do that, but with that big giant food processor over there, I'm simply going to put the sprouted soap beans and the water, blend it up until it gets smooth, then put in the raw tahini, the tamari, and then the last thing I put in will be the fresh herbs and the garlic and then the lemon juice, and then it's going to look like a paste, and then you can use that to put on whatever you want. I put a scoop of raw hummus on my salad sometimes. Definitely eat it with raw crackers and bread. It's nice if you just want to do a raw plate where you have pate, have the jackfruit salad, and you have the hummus together. You will be feeling so energized, so kind of good, so full of life that you don't want to eat those kind of dinner meals late at night because you're going to be looking at the wall talking about, So that's the jackfruit. Picture. And then, where's the other one? This is the walnut pate. They look very similar because they have some of the same ingredients. Okay, so you've seen the ingredients. We just put them together. We just kind of, we decided we were going to add some olives. You could have added calamate olives. You could have added, a little green pepper, a little red pepper. You could have put some other things in there, red or yellow or orange. You could put extra jalapeno peppers in there. You could add some sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds to it if you like. I would even venture to say a handful or so of raisins might be good, and some chopped nuts in the jackfruit salad. And so it's just learning to have these basic ingredients in place and have the confidence that you can put something together fabulous. And if it's not as fabulous as you want it to be, you can just do like I do and, grab a teaspoon and start tasting it. Once you start tasting it, you say, oh, that needs a little bit more of this. Or it needs a little bit more of that. And then you kind of get used to knowing exactly what you need to use. I'm so happy I'm going to be eating really, really good tonight. And then you always have avocados in the windowsill ripening. So you put any of these onto a saucer and you slice a couple of avocados and put it on top of it. And then put a scoop of that raw hummus on it. Oh, you'd be in heaven. So in heaven. And those are the kind of foods that we're going to have at our event next week. So again, make sure that you are signed up and you RSVP as soon as you get the information. If you have any questions, inbox me. I'll get to it in a few hours today or tomorrow. Just believe. Do not be afraid of anything. Just believe. See you in 2 weeks.